Easy now. Papa got beats, make it hit
come down. Oh, you make my high come down. Always tripping when you come around. I'ma have to cut you off, like right now. You see, I don't have to drive me. You can say that for your mama. Maybe you should smoke something. Try the marijuana. I was loving you good. The vibe was straight. Showed you a couple of things and they feelings changed. I treated you right. Everything was a gift from a time to your bag and a color on your lip. Yeah, you tell me your
Welcome to the Seahawks Man to Man podcast, powered by The Athletic. Shout out to the company. My name is Michael Sean Dugar. I'm here with my co-host, Christopher Kidd. Make sure you follow us both up on the tweet machine. You guys know where to follow me on Twitter. That's at Mike Dugar. That's MikeDugar. For all of our people watching right now, it's just at the bottom of the screen. Go ahead, check that out. Chris, talk to him.
What is up, everybody? It's your boy Christopher Kidd. Be sure to follow me on Twitter on Twitter at CKIDD206 and that's CKid206. And as you can see, we got Mike's stand in there. I threw mine away a long time ago, so I'll get a new one for myself. But we are making our way. We're making progress with that.
For what it's worth, for everyone who mentioned it, I like holding my mic. It makes me feel like a rapper, right? Like my name is Mike, holding a mic, like there's something to that. It's that I like to show off the clothes I'm wearing, you know. So shout out to the homie CJ at Lank Nation for the hoodie. But anyway, it's not about us. It's about having our special guest on the show. Basically a recurring guest now. It's like an annual episode with him on in the offseason. We have NFL editor of the USA Today Sports Media Group, Doug Farrar. Doug, what up, man? Nice to see you.
Love the hat. And by the way, Mike, how awesome is it that the Thunder are like historically sucky now?
Oh man, like I try not to. So I'm a kook. Chris is a kook. I personally don't like revel in the misery of others. Like when the Huskies lose, I don't care, right? Like for the most part, like I like when the Cougs win, positive energy. However, if the Thunder stink, 100% here for that. Like be bad, have all the good players just want to leave, like people trash in the city. Like yeah, that's I love it. I do love that. So yeah, let's bring our Sonics back, please.
Beautiful thing.
We're ready to talk some NFL. Doug, I love your insights, man. I'm excited about this. Let's jump into the draft class.
Yeah.
Now I want to put you on the spot a little bit because I rounded up all the draft grades that people give the Seahawks this year. And shout out Football Outsiders, they do a good job wrangling them all too. And you're kind of, and there's a theme here. There's all the people who are kind of local. It's like you, Shil Kapadia, and Danny Kelly. You guys all like. I consider you guys local guys who got too big for us local. Went and got national and got too big for us local folks. You guys all were in the same range, like kind of C plus.
Wait. You're with the Athletic.
Yeah, but see, I'm still the local beat guy. You know, that's, you know, when I get introduced anywhere, it's like Seahawks beat writer. See, I had to introduce you as NFL editor. See,
so when they do their roundups, when Shield and those other guys do their NFL roundups, they just don't call on you, so you're not national. Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't get the IRS doesn't consider me national yet either. At least not on the pay stub. So you're national, Shield's national, Danny's definitely national, and all you guys are kind of in that C plus range. I think all you guys get the same grade for similar reasons. But in yours, you kind of broke down. There's like a glass half full approach to Seattle's class. There's like hey, they got a nice slot guy who's going to help. They got a corner who's feisty, and they got a left tackle potentially who could be really nice. And then there's the glass half full that like or glass half empty, excuse me. That a lot of people think that this left tackle stinks. Their corner's 5'9", and Dwayne Eskridge might have been a reach. And you guys you're kind of landed in the middle. So is Danny. So is Shield. And until we get them on, you have to speak for all of them. Come on, pick one. There's no riding the fence here. Is this a great class or is this a terrible class?
I must admit that we split. Mark Schofield and I, who also writes for Touchdown Wire and does a great job, we split the draft grades because there's just so much to do. Mark wrote the Seattle grade, gave him a C plus. I give him a solid B to B minus.
Okay, here we go.
I think you have to look at, first of all, what they went out and got with a lot of, Gabe Jackson, Carlos Dunlap, Jamal Adams. Whether you think Jamal Adams is worth 2 first-round picks and, $80 bazillion they're going to have to pay him is one thing. I think there was a level of uncertainty in this process. It's why Seattle took a lot of Senior Bowl guys. They were looking for certainty in a draft class where there was none. And when these guys hit the field, Jamar Chase is one of the best receivers I've seen in the last 5 years. He opted out. We don't know if he's going to be rusty. We don't know. I'm sure he's been training like a demon and all that, but, being on the field and running those routes and reconnecting with Joe Burrow in Cincinnati and all that. There's more we don't know about draft prospects in this particular process than at any other time, maybe in the history of the draft, unless you go back to like the 30s when they were just reading Street and Smith and going, I'll take that guy. There's a lot on the line right now. And I don't necessarily factor in, here's the Dunlap pick, here's the Gabe Jackson pick, here are the multiple Jamal Adams picks. I don't look at it that way. I say for where they were, they did a very solid job. And you guys know this as well as I do. When you look at Seattle's history of first-round draft picks.
Oh, man.
And I will also say this. Jamal Adams fits the paradigm and the prototype when Seattle trades away their first-round picks because, Percy Harvin, Jimmy Graham, Jamal Adams, it's amazing athletes, and we'll figure out where to put them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they really knew what they were going to do with Jamal when they got him. I think they knew that he could sort of do everything. But I don't think they got him saying he's going to be a box guy and a blitz guy and be okay in the deep third and okay in the slot. I don't think you cut that much of a check for a guy who is functionally limited in a lot of the ways that you want a safety at that level to really excel.
So if you're in the if Mark's giving the C+ and you're in the BB- range, that would actually be one of the highest grades out there. I think only Mel Kiper and Rob Rang. Rob Rang gave a B. See, it's another local guy who's kind of gone national. There's a theme here. Why?
I've been Rob for 20 years. Yeah, Rob is one of the best.
Why are you willing to give kind of the benefit of the doubt to this class overall?
I think it's 5'10" MAC receiver who's 24. That's what he's 24. You look at that, 5'10" cornerback. Well, what are they doing with that? He's going to be a slot. Well, maybe he's going to play outside. Stone Forsythe, who the heck is that? Unless you watch Florida, you might not know. When you watch the tape and you actually break down what these guys can do, I think they got incredible value for where they sat. And I think the evaluations are probably colored to a point by they only have 3 picks. Schneider couldn't trade down, didn't have enough capital, teams weren't biting, or they wanted to stay here and get the guys they got. Again, we can debate Jamal Adams all day. I'd be perfectly happy to. Well, I mean, as we were talking off air with Khalil Mack and Jalen Ramsey and Laramie Tunsil, when you give up 2 first-round picks for a guy and you don't have him under club control for the next contract, you're going to pay him more than anyone else at his position. That's what either the Seahawks are going to do that, or they're going to tag him and then let him go. And that's, that's not fireable, but it's close. So, yeah, but I watched it because obviously I'm juggling 32 teams, so I didn't have time to really look at Seattle's draft picks at a forensic level the way I wanted to. And none of these guys were first 2 rounds, and I'm covering NFL nonstop in season. So pretty much when the Super Bowl ends, I switch over to draft and I watch as much as I can. So prep for this pod was the first time I really got a chance to sit down and say, okay, 2 to 3 games with Eskridge and Brown and Forsythe. Who are they? What kind of players are they? And I think when you look at it that way, instead of, Seattle's always weird and only the Raiders are weirder and they only have and blah, blah, blah. You take out the narratives, you look at where they were picking and the players they got, I think it's fine.
Okay.
But you have to drill down to that level, I think, before because these guys all have question marks. Eskridge was Mac and he's older and can he win outside? And, Brown with his size and the penalties and Forsythe, I still don't know how the hell he fought for the 6th round. There are obvious reasons he slipped out of like the top 5 tackles, but going to the 6th round was like, okay, I'm sure there were a lot of cartwheels in Renton when that happened. But when you take out the overriding narratives about how Seattle's weird in the draft and they kind of think their own way, and again you look at the players, I think the value's fine.
I want to go back to your top 10 basically because you left the Seahawks out. They were actually 12. What was missing in that so that they didn't make it? Because I thought, dang, they're only 2 spots away. Is it as simple as they didn't have enough draft picks and they would have been a top 10?
Picks.
Yep. I figured that. It was I knew it was that easy. I just wanted to hear it.
Yeah. Had Schneider gone down, and again, we don't know if I know Schneider will say we tried and we couldn't, move down to get more picks. It may have been, okay, here are the guys we targeted and they're still here. And I think you could make an argument that all 3 of the players they took, you could make a credible argument that if any of them had been drafted higher, certainly Forsythe, 3rd or 4th round, nobody would have been surprised by that. I'll tell you who Forsythe reminds me of as a plus pass blocker and a guy who needs work in the run game was Walker Little from Stanford, who was hurt in 2019, opted out in 2020, did not have a lot of tape on it. Best pass blocking lineman in this class, he went in the 2nd round. I don't think there's a huge difference between Walker Little and Stone Forsythe in both the positives and the negatives. So, what's missing is picks. I think value for where they were. Yeah. I mean, these aren't developmental guys. These are guys who have all 3 of them have the potential, certainly in the preseason and maybe in the regular season, maybe not Forsythe right away. Cause it's interesting. The Seahawks took a guy who can't run block. They're also very Seahawks to do that. I don't think the value is questioned. What we're missing is picks.
With Stone, I think we had Dane Brugler on the show, and the thing that's kind of trippy with Stone is the varying opinions on him. Like guys all the way think he's a 1st round guy to clearly teams didn't think he was that great because he fell to the 6th, and there were some like consensus boards that had him outside of the top 300. But do you see a guy who could be the successor to Dwayne Brown in 2022?
It's funny about diverging opinions on offensive tackles. Liam Eichenberg, who I think went in the 3rd round, somewhere around there. I had him as my OT 11. I don't know if I found him draftable.
Oh wow,
damn.
And when you see that, OT 4 and 2nd round guy, and I'm thinking, boy, I might be missing something. I think it kind of depends on what kind of tackle you like. If you like a glass eater who, if you like Tevin Jenkins, who the Bears took, and apparently going to move to left tackle, which, ouch. The glass eating, I can say this about Stone Forsythe. There is no greater proof that the Tom Cable era is over than the fact that they took it. There's absolutely, Tom Cable would look at Stone Forsythe and burn the tape and set the room on fire and just leave, because that's, if you want a glass eater, if you want a guy who doesn't lunge when he run blocks, if you want, power pig, that guy, with a finishing mentality, which Forsythe doesn't always have, you're not going to like him. If you're looking for a guy who can, and I do my notes now, you want guys who can mirror through the arc and go all the way, pick up a counter, pick up a stunt, do all that stuff. He's your guy. He can do that all day. He can do that right now. The work he did against Azeez Ojulari in the Florida-Georgia game, Azeez got nothing. Azeez went home. So the diverging opinions on a guy like that, where the pluses are so much over here obvious and the minuses are so over here obvious, it doesn't surprise me that it was a wild variance. Because the player has a wild variance, you assume the opinions are going to have a wild variance too.
Well, what's interesting about that though is that you would think that he would be given the benefit of the doubt because the pluses are in the area of something so valuable as pass blocking. It's like if you can do that in this league, you're going to be around for a long time. Like Dwayne Brown was a 1st round pick in 2008, I think, and like it's still playing at a high level in 2021. So I would have thought it like kind of like Walker Little. Like if there are some questions because Walker Little hasn't played since Nam, like you get the benefit of the doubt. For real, he hasn't played in a while. You get the benefit of the doubt because you can pass block. No.
Good morning, Vietnam. Yeah. It depends. And I will be fascinated to see when we're all, cross our fingers at training camp and we can actually go there and do that, how they work with him. Because he's got, and you look at 6'9" tackles in the NFL, Villanueva went from Pittsburgh to Baltimore. He was 6'9". Jonathan Ogden was 6'9". But Ogden was, obviously a rare bird. I think with his run blocking, you can have him use his hands aggressively. He's got long arms. Where he struggles is he's that tall and he plays high. And you can't do both. You can't be 6'9" and play that high. And by playing high, you guys know this, I mean, he will stand up instead of, using his lower body, using his leverage. He doesn't really know how to use his leverage. And I don't know how immediately teachable that is. So getting back to your question, can he be Dwayne Brown's replacement in 2022? I mean, they hope so, but we'll see. That might be a stretch, as if this was, the Buccaneers, so they're throwing 700 times a season, I would say there'd be more of a chance. But we know what this offensive personality is, and it doesn't matter who the coordinator is. It comes from up top. So, could be a stretch.
I want to stick with the offensive side of the football and talk about Dee Eskridge, because I think he's going to fit with this offense, but I've also read that there were possible other wide receivers that the Seahawks could have went after. If you were in that draft room, would Dee Eskridge been the number one receiver you're looking at, or was there someone else that you're saying this person would fit the Seahawks more?
Well, it was interesting when I read the second day transcript where Pete and John were both talking about, like, okay, they were asked, is he a slot guy? Is he an outside guy? And what they said was he's not really either. What we're looking for is matchups. And that we're creating matchups. And that's where the league is absolutely going. Positionless is all over the place. Slot guys are outside, except for DeAndre Hopkins. So they line up at backside ISO 97% of the time. Come on, Cliff. I know it's a Seahawks podcast, but we should encourage Cliff to keep doing that. But, when I watched Eskridge, couple things, he can win from outside. Now, if Jalen Ramsey's pressed up on him, at 6'2" and whatever, maybe not so much. But when you watch Devontae Smith, and I wrote a whole big piece about how 166 is not going to be a big deal for Devontae Smith. Well, how is he going to beat aggressive press coverage? With his feet. He absolutely knows how to gain leverage, take a cornerback this way when he wants to go that way, I will beat you at the line, and I will zig when you zag. Eskridge has, I wouldn't say Devontae Smith's footwork, but similar characteristics in the ability to get open against aggressive, bigger press corners. And that happens outside. That happens either as your Z or your X ISO or whatever. He ran a limited route tree. I understand that. It's not like Seattle's route tree is,
right.
Gilman Part 2 anyway. And there was this guy they drafted a couple of years ago who everyone said couldn't run routes, and he turned out okay. Oh, wait, not everyone said he couldn't run routes. There was one guy.
We'll get to that. Yeah.
So I think he can win outside. He can win. Now, that footwork I'm talking about, where you establish leverage against the cornerback, against the slot defender, against, safeties coming up, whoever. I should say defensive back at this point, because it's all interchangeable. When you don't have the boundary, Sherm told me this years ago. I was watching tape with him in 2015, and I said, what's the difference between, and we can talk about this with Trey Brown too, difference between playing outside and playing in the slot? Sherm said, the number one thing about playing in the slot is the boundary is no longer your friend. You have to look both ways. And I think Eskridge could provide real problems for slot defenders with his footwork, and then that sort of binary speed where he just takes off. And, he cuts very well into his slants and, drags and stuff like that. I think he has a lot of interesting ways to get open. To present, in one of Mike Martz's Rams playbook, he said, present a favorable picture to the quarterback as a receiver. And I think he does that. So, is he slot? Is he outside? I mean, obviously they want Metcalf and Lockett outside. Maybe Eskridge is the slot guy. Lockett is also a superlative slot receiver, has been for a long time. So they can flip it around. And, as I said, I think the more the NFL goes on, Mike Smith, who used to be the Falcons head coach, long time, 10 combines ago or so, we were talking about coverage. He was such a nice guy. I just, ear-hold him in the little hall outside the podiums. And we just sat there and talked coverage for 15 minutes. Apropos of nothing. And he said, where this is going is it's not going to be about schemes. It's going to be a matchup league in the passing game. How can I beat your corner? Or how can your defense beat me? in matchups. It's not, oh, it's this coverage against this formation. It's all about matchups. And I think Eskridge is a matchup guy. He can win that way.
Okay. We also know that Eskridge 24, and when he's up for a new deal, he'll be 28 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that will play a factor in him getting a new deal because of his age?
If he goes for over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns in each of the next 4 seasons, no. Now, if he becomes, if his size somehow works against him, which I don't think it will, if he gets hurt a lot, if he turns into Paul Richardson the sequel, well, of course it will. But, we'll see.
You mentioned something interesting about the whole matchup thing, because that's kind of where, as I've entered my nerdiness of football, like I'm just now learning.
Welcome.
Yeah, no, it's fun, like learning the ins and outs of like 3 technique, 5. D-line is kind of my thing now that I've been studying lately, in fronts and stick and bear and all this other stuff. Anyway, like I've come into these conclusions about like how other teams match up against other teams, particularly with your weakest link, matters a lot more than I think we give credit for. Like I think it really matters. Like let's use the O-line for example. I think having a good left tackle really matters, but honestly, I've leaned more towards like if the worst guy on your line is like really, really, really bad, your line will just ultimately fall apart, with the right personnel on the other side of it. And just on defense in general, I've been interested to kind of look at like, where's your weak link and can he be exploited? Because I've seen some games where I think the 2019 NFC Championship game was a really good example where the Niners just ran for 50 million yards on the Packers. They found like a weak link. I think it was one of their linebackers. And we're just like, we're just going to go at you.
If it was Packers, it was all their linebackers.
Yeah, they were just like, you guys have right here is your weak link. Shanahan was like, this is it. Doesn't matter that you have Pro Bowlers or you have talent everywhere else, which they did. You have a weak link right here, and we're going to kill you. And I feel like that, whether it's a weak lineman, a weak corner, weak whatever. Like even the Packers secondary last year was fine, except for what's his name from UW. It was
yes.
I mean, he got his ass kicked against the Buccaneers, but it was kind of like Carlton Davis against the Chiefs, where he got 3 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
Well, A, you don't put him on an island with Tyreek Hill. Come on. And B, outside of that, he was pretty good the rest of the season. I was stumping a little bit for a Kevin King homecoming because he wasn't as bad as that. Because especially with corners and safeties and offensive linemen, it's a reductive series of positions where the thing you don't do once will eradicate the thing you do well 700 times. So if you get your lunch handed to you in one game, that's all people remember.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially if it's in the playoffs too, which is why like the idea of a King reunion might not sit well. I'm not allowed to really say anything good about him after Twitter during the championship game, but it's just that idea of like your weak links matter more than I think we kind of give credit for, which is what made the Rams defense last year I think so incredible, because like they were top heavy, but like they were also like really deep too, so they were like frequently putting 11 dudes out there who could kick your ass.
They were schematically really diverse and Russ had his issues with that, where too high, disguise. Too high, keep too high, but we're going to run cover 6, which is quarters over here and cover 2 over here. You never knew what you were going to get. And now the Rams bring in Raheem Morris, who is more of a straight man-on-man cover guy, and they have the guys to do that. But I'm fascinated to see with the Chargers, Brandon Staley, former Rams DC, now Chargers head coach, Michael Davis, one of the most underrated corners in the NFL. Derwin James, he can stay healthy for once. And they got my guy, Asante Samuel Jr. in the second round, who's just perfect. Best cover 6 corner in the NCAA last year. Great zone awareness. So, yeah, the one thing I'll also say about offensive line, I know Greg Cosell has been saying this for a couple of years, and I agree. I don't think there's any discernible difference in the importance between left tackle and right tackle at this point. Because as often as not, your best pass rusher is either going to be bookended by another equally good pass rusher, or he's going to be on the defensive left side anyway. Counter into that, the fact that, if you think, well, I can handle Leonard Floyd as the right tackle, but, oh, crap, here comes Aaron Donald on a stunt. And Aaron Donald played like 30% of his snaps last year at defensive end. You don't want that. I don't want that. So, yeah, I think it is more about matchups than positions at this point. And you look at what the Seahawks did. What did they go for? Speed and athleticism, all over the place. With their 3 picks. I say all over the place. But yeah.
Let's get into their second pick, Trey Brown, who everyone kind of they surprised everyone. At least Pete did. It surprised me at least. It's just like, man, you took a 5'9" guy to play outside. Like that's really I commended him in our post draft podcast just because like I've kind of grown again in my nerdiness to realize you shouldn't pigeonhole anyone based on measurables if they can play. No. Right? Like if Poona Ford's 5'10" or whatever, but he's a beast inside, take him, right? Like I don't think you should be pigeonholed by any measurables, and that includes corners. But kind of what was your kind of overall thought when you saw Pete take a 5'9" guy and then say that, oh man, Pete was like, oh, he's gonna play outside. Like how did you kind of react to that?
Brown had a total of 29 snaps in the slot in college. So, and again, we get back to my discussion with Sherm years ago. What's the difference between, because the thought is, oh, you take the smaller, slower guy and put him inside. And that may have worked like 10, 15 years ago. It doesn't work now, double slot and, switch release crossers and everything just going nuts. With Trey Brown, I just read my notes. Another guy with great speed and return ability. By the way, Eskridge and Brown are both great returners. So that's, I think that's the thing. Seattle obviously wants to be faster and more athletic all over the place. I remember I did a piece with Asante Samuel Jr. Asked him a couple things at his pro day, and he mentioned dog mentality about 17 times in a 10-minute interview. Trey Brown, if I talked to him for the same amount of time, would probably mention it 25 times because that's he is a dog. He wants to kick your ass. He's not always going to do it, and sometimes when he does do it, he's going to get flagged. He got flagged a lot, and it's like when I was watching J.C. Horn, who the Panthers took 8th overall. Like, oh, that's a flag in the NFL. So is that. Oh, that is too. Well, that's going to be interesting. Pete has proven that he'll take aggression and try and work with it. So aggressive outside disruptor who comes to his receiver looking for a fight. That's a good fit for this defense. The downside, 17 penalties over the last 2 seasons. That's
a lot. That's a lot.
Carroll's history seems to indicate that he'll accept that to a point. Last season, Brown allowed 21 catches on 44 targets for 266 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 picks, and an opponent passer rating of 46.2. He has acquired a lockdown mentality, and I think that's important. Because there are corners like Jamar Johnson from Indiana, who I thought was the best deep third safety in this class. The Broncos got him way late because he just cannot tackle. Like,
oh boy, that's a problem.
It's a 3rd round. It's like a 3-round drop. And I could see Vic. I was talking to Mark Schofield on our podcast. I could see Vic Fangio looking at Jamar Johnson's coverage and going, "That's a 1st-round guy." Looking at his tackling and going, "Where's the Maylocks? I need a drink." That's not Trey Brown. So Trey Brown will go after it at all times. What I said is if he wasn't 5'10", he would have been taken a lot higher than he was. And does that sound like someone else we know from about 2002?
Yeah. Well, actually, that's not. John Snyder said that exact same. I think he said if Trey was 6'2", he would have went top 10. Like, I don't know if he would have went top 10, but he agreed that, yeah, he would have went higher.
He's not just a press corner, he's a man press corner. And I think man coverage has become more important in today's NFL because so much of it is quick game. Much of it, it's so much more 0 to 3 step drops and 0 to 1 step drops. And get the ball out. It's about sustaining and keeping drives going and yak. And yes, we're going to have explosive plays, but those are more steamed up than trying to stand back there in the pocket for 6 seconds because against modern defenses, you can't do that anymore. So with quick game, you're not always going to get to the quarterback to disrupt what he's doing. What you have to do is to be able to disrupt the receiver. Just makes sense. You can't get to the quarterback. You throw the receiver off his step. He's supposed to go 4 steps up and in. And if that 4 steps up and in takes an extra half second, the quarterback has to recalibrate with Zadarius Smith right here, or Aaron Donald right here, or whoever. And that doesn't always work out. So in that regard, Trey Brown is very much a modern cornerback. And if you want a guy, I would say that if you want a guy who you can move inside and out, you would want a smaller guy because generally speaking, it's the bigger corners who struggle with 2- and 3-way goes and option routes and your Julian Edelmans and Cooper Kupps and Chris Godwins in the world who can just, Eskridge, by the way, is another one of those guys. He will give bigger cornerbacks fits in coverage because he's so quick in and out of his breaks. So I think in that, and I know DJ Reed was sort of a inflection point for Carroll and Schneider saying, hey, maybe smaller cornerbacks are good. I know Carroll has history going back to college, but certainly the ideal has been do this big thing, you know. And Seattle played a lot more man than people think. People look at Carroll and go, oh, cover three. Not really. They played a lot more man last year. I don't know if that's a Carroll thing or a Norton thing or whoever thing, but, you know, can Trey Brown play 800 snaps outside? I don't know. Could he do 400 and 400? Yeah, I think so. That might be, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with Forsythe and his run blocking. Trey Brown might wind up being their best value pick in this draft. I loved his tape because I love cornerbacks who just want to get after it.
You guys talked earlier about matchups, and is that maybe another reason why Pete Carroll and John Schneider decided to make a move on Trey Brown, considering looking at the NFC West and the wide receivers and so many different positions these guys do play, whether it be slot, outside? They're like, you know what, we should go with Trey because he can pretty much do it all. Like you said, he could probably do 400 outside and the other 400 inside, which is a pretty good split. Is that something that the Seahawks were like, you know what, we'll take a risk on that, even though he doesn't fit he doesn't fit the quote of he's 6'2", long arms, and all these other attributes?
Well, I give Carroll and Schneider, you know, kudos for not just, well, we take big guys only, so I don't care if this guy's good. He's not a big guy. That over time is how you get yourself fired as an executive coach. Hi, Matt Patricia. You signed Justin Coleman to a 4-year, $28 million deal, and you make him play man. Justin Coleman had probably never played man in his entire life. So, yeah, you look at the NFC West. I mean, there's Cooper Kupp. There's, you know, a very schemed up passing game. Certainly, here's Deebo Samuel. Are you excited for the Trey Brown Deebo Samuel matchups? Because I am. That's dog on dog. Yeah, Rondale Moore with the Cardinals, that's going to be fun because that kid had like a 2-route tree in that Purdue offense, but you put him in a spread system like Cliff insists on running. You know, so there are matchups to be had, and when you have 3-by-1 sets, which are the norm in the NFL, you got 2 slot guys to cover to the dominant side of the formation. Now, you can either have a couple of really good slot corners, smaller guys who can move, or you can bring your, you know, box safety down and get your ass kicked. Your choice.
The choice is yours.
The choice is yours. Do this successfully or get your ass kicked. One or two.
One of probably the biggest storyline of the offseason up here in Seattle was like, what in the world happened to the offense in the second half of the 2020 season? We've dissected this thing a million times on here, but when you look at what happened to Seattle after, say, the Buffalo game, or let's go there. Like, just what did you see?
I think there was an element of predictability. I think the offensive line let Russ down a bit. I think Russ let the offensive line down a bit. I think that was mutual. I think in the passing game, Seattle got a bit kind of dogmatic with what they wanted to do. There's that story. It was before the Cardinals game where Russ had, you know, I have some ideas, and they just told him to leave. Mm-hmm. If I were Russell Wilson, I'd be like, really? I'm not calling in Aaron Rodgers here, but that's ridiculous. You want I wrote a piece about that, and, you know, talking to Bruce Arians years ago with when it was Carson Palmer in Arizona, and Palmer was telling me, you know, the first thing Bruce does is, okay, here are the first 20, the opening 15 or whatever. Well, what are you most comfortable? What is my quarterback most comfortable with? Because if he's not comfortable with it, I really don't care. There are times in Seattle seems to want to put Russell in a hair shirt and make him run stuff he's not comfortable with. And I know Dan Orlovsky made a great point to me. We were just talking probably 2-3 months ago, and he said, you know, there are times when Russell's on the same page and the offensive line isn't and the receivers aren't. And there are times when the offensive line's there and the Russell and the receivers aren't. It's really hard to get everyone together. And this offense has been built so much on Russell making, you know, improvisational plays, second reaction plays. It's almost schoolyard. I don't mean that in a, you know, it's not like Russell can't handle more. Obviously he can. He can handle whatever playbook you give him. But there has been an element of schoolyard ball to this offense the passing game for a long time. And I think Pete Carroll has reveled in that and hated it at the same time. It's like, Mike Holmgren and Brett Favre. It's like, no, yes. Not talking about Brett's recent forays into social media, which that's a different story. But I think in the end, Russell didn't see what he wanted a lot, and he got frenetic, which he tends to do. And all of a sudden, he's breaking the pocket before he should. There was not that down-to-down consistency that he had in the first few weeks. I know Lockett talked about defenses sort of figuring out what they were doing. I don't know how much to place into that because defenses generally know what you're doing. Really, it's, these guys get paid bazillions of dollars and the coaches get paid bazillions of dollars. If you can't figure out what they're doing when they're, when they're two slot receivers in a tight formation, if you don't have a pretty good idea what that means, why are you here? So, I there's an obvious disconnect between what they want, what the coaches want to do, and what Russell wants to do. I don't know what it is. I don't know specifically what the disconnect is. I would think more play action. I would think more shot plays off play action. Maybe Russell would like some of the run game to be replaced with a timing rhythm passing game or a West Coast offense deal, which I think he had more with Bevel. They did with Schottenheimer. I don't know with the new system what that's going to be, although they said, with the new OC, it's going to be about matchups and creating speed and, mismatches and all that. We'll see. Does that mean more of a Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay offense where it's heavy pre-snap motion, heavy play action, making things easier for Russell? I would think that would be a great idea. Anytime you can make it easier for your quarterback, even if your quarterback is Russell Wilson or Tom Brady, I think you should do that.
The interesting thing you mentioned is Russ letting the O-line down to some extent, or even his coaches to some extent. What does that in particular look like?
What it looks like in practice, in the actual game, is instead of, because there's a difference between pocket movement and moving out of the pocket, you guys know this. Pocket movement is Tom Brady. He is the best in that 4 foot by 4 foot boxing ring. He'll move and he'll move and he'll move. He's never run boot in his life. And it's why, Mac Jones has no second reaction ability. Well, Tom Brady doesn't. Yeah, because he's Tom Brady. Not Mac Jones. Not Kyle Trask. Stop it. I think there were times when Russ broke the pocket too quickly. I think he took himself out of plays that were there as a result. And I think that's been a problem for a number of years. I can go back to 2017 in particular when I think they had 4 rushing touchdowns and Russ had 3 of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. J.D. McKissick had the other one.
That was the nadir. Was it McKissick?
Yeah, he had week 4 against the Colts. He had a 30-yarder.
Catches for Washington last year. Go figure. That was the nadir of the Tom Cable era, which, low bar anyway. So I think, quarterbacks get spooked when they get hit a lot. I don't care who you are. You just do. So what it looks like on the field is Russell breaking from structure before he needs to because he's sensing pressure that is there, or even more dangerously, sensing pressure that isn't there, what we call seeing ghosts. And I think Russell saw a lot of ghosts last year.
Damn. That's unfortunate. That explains why he went on that media tour and explaining, hey, I've been hit way too many times. But with that, you look at the offensive line right now, Dwayne Brown, Damian Lewis, Ethan Posick, Gabe Jackson, and even Brandon Shell. Doesn't that seem like a pretty decent O-line that is going to be better than it was last season?
Posick, yeah.
Tough one.
Posick, I really had questions about his play strength when he came out. I haven't really seen anything to disabuse me of that notion. Now, there are centers who can get away with being smaller, and I always think of Jason Kelsey because he's so mobile and, it doesn't matter that he's 290 or whatever. But I think in this offense, you want a guy with more play strength. I don't think he's ever really acquired that. The guards, I think they're fine. Dwayne Brown, good deal. It may be overall the best offensive line Russ has had. I know you're thinking. Right, go back and think. Has he ever had a better one? And again, very low bar.
Yeah, maybe the 2013 line was good. I think. Yeah, good enough to win the Super Bowl.
I'm going to look that up right now. 2013 Seahawks.
Yeah, off the top of my head, it escaped me. But I mean, even if this one is the best, like in year 10, I mean, damn, it's about time.
10 years.
Well, it was the year when it was 2015. Who was the guy, the defensive tackle that Cable made a center for the first 7 games? They lost like 4 of those games. It was pretty much because of that.
Oh, that's a good trivia. I need to pull that. Someone's listening like, Mike, it's this. And I just can't think off the top of my head. Oh, man.
It's going to bug me.
No, the Tom Cable era was a very interesting.
Okay, 2015
time.
Seahawks. The primary starting left tackle was Paul McQuiston.
Oh.
James Carpenter left guard, Max Unger center, J.R. Sweezy right guard, and that was in the really seriously developmental era of J.R. Sweezy. They did not have a good offensive line in their Super Bowl winning year.
Man, that's impressive. Russ is impressive.
Russ is that dude.
I think the year after that, yeah, they had Okung, and then Carpenter, Unger, Sweezy, and Britt.
So that should be solid.
2014 was pretty solid.
2014 pretty solid. Okay, yep.
And we'll see what happens with Stone Forsythe. Do they want him at right tackle? I don't know. We'll see. I would expect to see him a lot in the preseason to see like how they've coached him up to be more aggressive and use his leverage better. If he can nail that, that could be larceny in the 6th round. But
So it sounds like for the most part, you're not 100% sold on Ethan Posig. Is that something that maybe the Seahawks should have done different in the draft and gone after a center to solidify that center position?
I mean, possibly. Landon Dickerson wasn't going to be there. He was my top center. Creed Humphrey, who I really like a lot, went to the Chiefs at the bottom of the 2nd round. Quinn Miners from Wisconsin Whitewater was kind of the Senior Bowl darling, went in the 3rd round of the Broncos. I'm not as sold on him. Josh Myers from Ohio State would have been maybe a better option. Drew Dahlman from Stanford. If they want more of that athletic guy with sort of Jason Kelsey upside, who can get beaten in power situations, but is agile and mobile and enough of a astute shot caller to make up for it, yeah, I think they could definitely improve in that area. And I think, just going back to my play strength concerns with Posick, I haven't seen enough to make me think, oh yeah, he's gotten over that. And if you have play strength issues and you're trying to work on your leverage and blah 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 coaching points, and this is what Stone Forsythe may run into, at a certain point you just have to admit that maybe you're not physically cut out to handle the rigors of that position, and that may be where he winds up.
Ethan's interesting for me because it goes back to what I was saying about like your weakest link, quote unquote. Like I think if Ethan's their worst lineman of their starting 5, I can get down with that. I think like that's knowing what the skill positions they have and how good I think the defense can be. Like if the weakest guy on your starting 11 for the Seahawks on offense is Ethan, like that you can win a division with that. No.
Yeah, I mean, look at what the Chargers did. They had a center last year. I forgot the dude's name, which is good for him. Gave up 33 pressures as a center, which led the league. They went out and signed Corey Linsley, the NFL's best center. Huge money. Corey Linsley gave up 3 total pressures all of last season. That started the season through the NFC Championship game. And they got Rashawn Slater, who was my OT1A. So that's a team that decisively went out to protect the quarterback. And it depends on, this has been kind of a guard-based offensive line to a point, and they're set there. Left tackle-based offensive line. They've been set there when Brown's healthy. It really depends on. I understand. I understand with and agree with what you're saying about the weakest link. There are positions where, unless you're the Raiders a couple of years ago, you're not going to spend $100 million on your offensive line per year, and they just traded all those guys anyway. But if I'm Seattle, do I want to throw a pick at the Raiders for Rodney Hudson? You bet your ass I do. That would have been pretty good.
Where did he go? He went to Arizona?
I think so.
Rodney Hudson even at this point in his career, is 10 times the center that Posick is, and that's not. I'm not trying to drag the guy through the mud. It's just that Hudson is much, much better. But it depends on. You have to make sacrifices under the cap at certain positions, and it just depends for Seattle on where they want to make those sacrifices.
Well, speaking of the cap, let's get back to the guy we talked about a little bit earlier in Jamal Adams, and that's kind of the next step for Seattle in their offseason, assuming that there's no movement like KJ Wright or Richard Sherman, which I don't think there will be. Specifically with KJ, I think that ship is kind of sailed for Seattle. But their next move is Jamal, like figuring out what to do with him. So here we go. I'm Jamal's agent real quick. I forget the dude's name, but I'm gonna be him for a second here. Like, all right, my case here is Jamal can impact the defense at like kind of all three levels as a rusher, effectively playing like a linebacker, and can cover, better than anyone else who is a front seven guy primarily. I guess that would be the argument there. Because he can do that, so young, 3-time Pro Bowler, we want $19 million a year because my guy can do a little bit of everything, and he's elite at the most elite thing in the league, which is getting to the quarterback. Boom. Did I just get $19 million a year from my guy? What you think, Doug? No? Oh, damn. At the dramatic pause, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Did I get it?
Well, because while you, Mr. Agent, are going blah, 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 I'm pulling up the Pro Football Focus stats. And winning slot coverage last year. Let's include the playoffs, by all means. Slot coverage. Jamal Adams led the team with 107 coverage snaps, gave up 18 catches on 24 targets for 235 yards, 73 yards after the catch. Deep third coverage, he was even worse. So my counter would be he is the best blitzing safety of his era. He may be the best blitzing safety in NFL history, unless it was Larry Wilson and back in the 60s. And he's a great box defender, and he's a very aware guy when everything's in front of him. I don't know how much that matters.
So how about, okay, here we go.
Because let me put it this way. How is he? I mean, he's kind of a lighter Devin White. Blitzes from all over the place, very aware, not that great in coverage.
Now, so how about this then?
Okay. We
add we contextualize some of those numbers from last year to add that my guy suffered an elbow injury in week 2 and played through that. Had the what was he out with for 4 weeks? It was a groin. Had the groin injury. Got his shoulder smashed by Gerald Everett in week 9. I want to say
that wasn't pretty though.
Yeah, no, it looked like how honestly. Dwayne Eskridge broke his collarbone. If you guys go look at the Syracuse game where Eskridge breaks his collarbone, his clavicle or whatever in 2019, defender lands on him, he's done. Like Jamal's injury against the Rams in that first matchup looks exactly the same. He just bounced through, and he was playing with broken fingers as well, and still was a Pro Bowl guy in 2020. Now, can we get $19 million?
I think he can play deep third coverage. I think he can play slot coverage. I don't think he has done well with either of those with Seattle. Now, the counter to all this is you, Mr. Jamal Adams agent, have me, anonymous Seahawks executive, over a total barrel. I, anonymous Seahawks executive, it must have been the Mescal. I don't know why they did this. 2 first-round picks. Again, Khalil Mack, Jalen Ramsey, these guys all became the highest paid players at their positions purely because their teams had given up so much draft capital for them and didn't have them under club control for the next contract. So at that point, you're looking at either getting your ass fired or being on the precipice of it because you give up that much for a guy that you only had under club control for a year or 2. There's no way that happens.
Now getting $19 million, it sounds like.
Well, you're going to get somewhere. I'm looking at the yearly for safeties.
I think Buddha has it now, right? Is it 15?
Buddha's making the most.
Buddha's at $14.75 million. Justin Simmons is at $15.25 million a year.
And he's with Denver, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's right.
Me too. Yeah.
But see, here's why we're not just gonna go for 16 or 17 here is because and Jamal's agent's name is Kevin, so I'm Kevin today. So nice to meet you, anonymous Seahawks executive.
Well, Kevin, you're not getting 19 million because no other safety gets more than 15.25. First of all.
Well, see, that's the thing about my guy. He is not just a safety. He is what we like to call a weapon.
The W.
Yeah,
he's
big dubs around here.
He is a top tier weapon. He's also a middle tier safety.
Oh, see,
this is why they don't have the players do the negotiations because they be in there saying stuff like this, like, yeah, no, you good at this, but like, no, let's be real here, and you need that.
Well, I
to be the middleman.
Yeah, I wrote a pretty extensive tape piece when they traded for Jamal Adams, and there were reps with the Jets where he was playing deep third and he was great at it. So I think he has the physical tools to do it. I do wonder if this is another one of those things where Seattle they buy, they go to the grocery store not just hungry but stoned, and they come out of there with some stuff, man. You got 25 bags of gummy bears. Well, I just wanted them. Did they get Jamal Adams not knowing what he would do for them, as they did with Percy Harvin, as they did with Jimmy Graham? They tried to make Jimmy. You guys remember this? They tried to make Jimmy Graham a blocking tight end for the first 2 years.
Yeah, Jimmy Graham agrees that was he liked a tweet that I had that said something like
it's
that.
like buying. You said having a Ferrari and driving it on the freeway going 60 something.
Yeah. I said it was like having a sports car and driving at the speed limit or something. And Jimmy liked the tweet. I didn't even tag him, and it was in a reply too. Like he was
like having a Ferrari and trying to tow your boat with it.
Wasn't a bright move.
Here's Jamal Adams is going to be the highest paid safety in the NFL with his next contract because the Seahawks have no choice but to do so.
Oh, well, I guess that'll sum it up, right?
That history indicates that this will happen.
Yeah, and I think and the last thing on this too is that
here's another story.
If I and the I don't know if Jamal's guy would make this point too, but it's interesting. Like those guys who did become the highest paid, I think Laramie Tunsil beat the highest paid left tackle number by a couple million annually too. Yeah. It wasn't like he just it wasn't he beat it by a significant amount because he had all leverage. So like, what'd you gonna do? You gave up the house for me, and you have to pay me. So
Texans, I could see the Texans like two guys in the same room actually bidding against each other and like they're outbidding themselves. that would be a Texans thing under Bill O'Brien.
So Jamal, Kevin, you owe me 1%. That's it. Just 1%. That's it. I'll take it.
1% of like 16.5 a year would probably be a nice little. You could sock that away.
Yeah, no, then I'd be national. Then I would be. Then I could be.
You'll be on D's level.
Yeah, that could do it.
I'll tell you this, and now your guy Quandre is a great deep third safety. So maybe they figure, well, we got him back there. We don't need to, But if I'm giving Jamal Adams 16.5 a year, I want some deep third, and I want some slot, and I want it right now.
Oh, demands.
And he has the potential to do all of that.
Yeah.
There's nothing about Jamal Adams from an athletic profile perspective that he can't do on defense. I mean, like whatever. He is a weapon in that sense. You just maybe want to see a little bit more.
No, I feel it.
If you're paying him that much money, they might want to see a little bit more too.
Yeah. No, I mean he's 24 or 25. Like, yeah, there's room for him to
I'm
grow.
not saying anywhere near that he's not a great player. I'm not even, because that would just make me look like an idiot, and I don't need help.
Yeah. Here we go. We'll take the 19. We're gonna take the 19.
I figured you would be okay with that.
No, they owe me the 1%.
If they give him 19, they're gonna have a lot of explaining to do.
I want to take a look at the backup quarterback position because you recently wrote a really cool piece. Gardner Minshew might be a perfect fit for the Seahawks, and personally, I'm like, damn, that's actually not bad at all, considering Mike and I are Cougs. So we like the Minshew mania, and why not bring it to Seattle? I think the locker room vibes with him and Russ would actually be very entertaining. But let's take a look at it from the football standpoint, and let's hear your thoughts on why you thought that made sense. And if people haven't checked it out, please go check it out. It's a really fun and cool piece. But go ahead, take it away. Minshew as a backup.
I don't have the stats in front of me, but what is Seattle's passing offense based off of? We're talking about deep shots off play action.
Yeah.
Well, Minshew is a really phenomenally, the Jorts and Florida man, and I get all that. He's a phenomenally accurate deep thrower. He's pretty good under pressure. He's great with play action. So, of course, the Jaguars didn't use it last year because, Doug Marone, Jay Gruden. That's what you get. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like, bring the kid to Washington and it'll be a thing.
Yep.
I think he fits their system. He's not Russell Wilson mobile, but he's Gardner Minshew mobile, and that's more than enough. He can run boot all day. He's thrown to levels. He's done quick game. He's done 7-step drops. He's done, I totally understand why the Jaguars took Trevor Lawrence. I would say that makes Gardner Minshew one of the 5 best backup quarterbacks in the NFL and a top 25 starter. So if they can do that, I think they're shooting par or below.
And the crazy thing is Mike and I have had discussions, and he's talked about on the podcast before about
my wife is a Coug, but I'm not. I do not have that affiliation, but Laura went to Wazoo, so there you go.
Oh, shout out. There it is. That's dope. But yeah, Mike always talks about, one of the most important positions is that backup position, and mentioning everything that Minshew can do. If Russ went down, why not have fellow Coug and a guy that can do all those things that you just pointed out? That would make perfect sense. No disrespect to Geno Smith because he's brought back for another season, but a younger, flashier, cooler kid, I mean, I'm all in. Sign me up. How can we get it done? Do we need to create a petition?
Well, I don't want to freak anyone out here, but Russell's been hit more than any quarterback since he came into the league. And more hits since any quarterback since 2010. He's had more hits than any other quarterback since 2 years before he was drafted. He's missed 2 snaps in his whole career. That's nuts.
Yeah. No, that is pretty crazy. Now we got to knock on something. Is this table wood?
Yeah.
I don't. Oh.
Here we go. Doug's got some wood.
There we go.
Glass behind you.
The wall.
Oh, the wall. Okay. Yeah. No. We got to be careful. We want Russ healthy around here, man. He's good for business.
As Rich Eisen says, I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
Doug, we're gonna let you give another victory lap here. I think we might have had you do this last year too, because you weren't the only person really high on DK's route running ability when he got drafted, but you were probably one of the most prominent. I want to say, I'll put it this way: you were one of the few people who couldn't have go 12s in their bio on Twitter or the last name Metcalf, who was nah, he can run routes. You wrote that piece in 2019, why DK Metcalf is a better route runner than you think. And it's just everything has come to life there. What do you think, what does step 3 look, or what does year 3 look like for that guy, since you're now the DK Metcalf whisperer of the show here? You got it all. So what are we going to get from this guy in year 3?
Apparently a lot of bad takes on why a 10.36 second 100 meter coming from guys who wouldn't run a 10 meter 10.36. I put myself in that too. I think more of the same. I don't think Seattle's route tree is ever going to be tremendously complex. It's beat your guy to a large degree. Eskridge being in there, Lockett's more the route runner. I did a lot of tape last year, 2 or 3 pieces on the matchups between Jalen Ramsey and DK Metcalf. And there were some route complications involved, but it was really, does Mike Evans run a full route tree? Yeah, but his main goal on the field is to be Mike Evans, to be 6'5", 230. DK Metcalf's main goal is to be 6'4", 226, running, really, really fast. Whether that's in a straight line or not, and making, Calvin Johnson style contested catches. I think year 3 looks a lot like year 2 in that regard. Whether they want him to run a skinny slant, sure, that'd be nice, but what he's doing is what he should be doing.
Where do you think Tyler and DK rank among the best receiver pairings in the league?
I'd have to look, but top 10, top 5,
top 3.
Who did we have above them last year?
We had Julio, Calvin Ridley, and
Calvin Ridley, by the way, is super underrated.
Yeah, very.
He was the most prolific deep receiver in the NFL last year.
Yeah, he slept on.
You know who also put up Tyreek Hill numbers in a bad offense? Nelson Aguilar. His deep numbers were crazy.
Oh, after that drop, I guess he got better, right?
Oh yeah, no. In Philly, he's like public enemy number one, but he can play.
One thing you don't do, and then they don't remember the 700 things you do well. That's we'll call that the Aguilaritis. Yeah, top 3 to top 5, I would say.
Yeah, that's what we had him. We had him 3. Our number 1 team was Atlanta, and then the number 2 team we had with wide receivers.
Yeah, who was number 2? I can't. Was it Evans and Godwin?
It might have been Evans and Godwin.
Yeah,
and then we put DK and Lockett at 3rd.
Yeah, that seems fair.
Sounds about right.
Doug, you mentioned DK running the 100 a little while back there. What did you think he was going to run?
I don't know. He hung with everyone for 10 yards, and that's considering the fact that he's like 4 times as big as any of those other guys. Yeah, it was pretty decent.
It's impressive.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous, man. We've talked about this in the show a couple of times. That dude is different.
If they wanted to tailor it to his skill set, if it's 100 meter, at 50 meters, have a cornerback there that you can just beat the crap and then finish the rest of the race. That would be
yeah, just put Darius Slay in his way. Poor Darius, man. That Jim Schwartz just set him up for just destruction.
Bad scheme.
Yeah, that was. I think Jim's out of there now. I think so. Like, God bless. Doug, we're gonna get you out of here on this, man. I thought we've covered kind of Seahawks offseason. We haven't really dug into the other teams' offseasons too much, but where do you think Seattle now stacks up in the division? Give us your NFC West power rankings right here on the fly.
All the things I'm interested to see when the 2021 season starts is Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay's offense. That's going to be – we're going to realize how bad Jared Goff really is.
Oh, Jared Goff was ass. Oh, my goodness.
And we're going to realize when Jared Goff's best receiver is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Ooh, boy. Yeah.
I think Joe Budden said it best. It's 2 packs of ass. Like, it was just...
Oh, you're talking about Jared Goff? Yeah, nice.
Jared Goff.
Yeah.
No, it's kind of scary to think about an arm talent like Stafford in an offense ran by McVay.
Yeah, that's going to be a top 3 passing game. Raheem Morris replaces Brandon Staley. I don't know if that's a net downgrade, but it's just that Staley was so good.
Yeah.
Raheem he's a pretty adaptable guy. I would say Rams and Seahawks. And as far as who's 1 and who's 1A, it's a push. Niners are going to, they have to come back from that injury block last year, but they also lost some, they got Verrett back, and Verrett, of course, after his injury history, was like the only guy who was healthy. So now probably, I don't want to say that. Arizona, I don't know. I don't know what Cliff's doing with that offense. I would go LA, Seattle really close, San Francisco, Arizona.
With San Francisco there, are you projecting a whole year of Jimmy G, or does Kyle eventually just be like, we got to play this
and
trade
why
kid?
the hell they had a $26.8 million cap hit. It was like $2.8 million in dead cap if they released him. So you're holding on to Jimmy. That's a $26 million mentorship for Trey Lance. But by the way, I love that fit. I love the Trey Lance fit. Fullback, under center, wham, Y throwback. All the stuff Shanahan runs. North Dakota State. You will see Trey Lance sooner than later. I'm convinced of that, because the first time Jimmy G can't read middle of field close coverage and airmails whoever, Kyle's going to be like, oh, this crap again.
Let's
put in number 5.
Since Mike put you on the spot, I'll put you on the spot too. Over under 11.5 wins for the Seahawks this season, including the fact that there's one more game, not to have 17 this year.
Does that include the playoffs?
No. Regular season.
So they'd have to win 12 games to go over. 12-5.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go over.
And you said that with the breeze too.
Yeah, 12-5. They won 12 last year too, and the roster is probably about even. I would say upgraded the O-line a little bit, downgraded the cornerback spot, at least for now. Lost Jay Reed, picked up Kerry Hyder up front. Like it's relatively.
It's gonna be fun. That's all I got.
The division is pretty crazy.
Get back to the middle of the pack though. That was not one of the 2 weirdest things in the NFL. What the Patriots defense, and with the opt-outs, of course, they were and Gilmore was hurt. But watching New England's and Seattle's defenses perform at a below average level, I was kind of wondering what sport I was watching.
Well, the Seattle's whole 2020, like when looking back at it now, the offense was electrifying and then stunk, and then the defense stunk and then was electrifying.
Exactly.
I don't know if we've ever seen both sides of the ball. I mean, you would know better the history of football. Two sides of the ball basically just flip-flopping like that on really wide ends. Like Seattle's defense was bottom like 5 and then became like top 5, and Seattle's offense was like top 2. I don't know if it bottomed out, but it definitely regressed to like a below average unit. Like doing that over the course of one 16-game season with no significant injuries to like the quarterback spot is pretty crazy.
And yet it's so Seattle. It's so Seahawks. It's so wavy variants, and you don't know what we're going to get.
Yeah, no, that was. I like 12 wins. 12 wins, and maybe get a trip to.
I would take the slide over.
Yeah, I'll take that. We do not encourage gambling on this show quite yet until we get a gambling sponsorship. Then we will encourage the hell out of it.
Responsible.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and then we get a little cut there. But ladies and gentlemen, that is the homie Doug Farrar, NFL editors, USA Today Sports Media Group. Does great stuff. He is a national guy, despite his arguments against it. I mean, you see all the polls. He had Mike Smith, Mike Martz. I just casually watched tape of Richard Sherman. No, man, you're doing it, man. Doug, you provide really good stuff, man. I love reading the stuff you do. I feel smarter every time I read your stuff, so I really appreciate the work you do.
No, I never name drop, as I was telling Roger Goodell.
Yeah, it was just, I was counting them all in my head. I was like, man, Doug is dropping a lot of names here. It's just like, I just talked to an NFL coach casually just for 15. I've talked to Pete one-on-one one time.
Got to watch film with Richard Sherman. We were talking about, what's the toughest part about slot? Any boundaries.
The thing about watching tape with Sherman, it took me 6 months to get me to do it. He's like, people don't want to hear me. People don't want to hear me talk about my blah, 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 blah. So I laid off for a couple months, and then I went into the locker room one day, and he was sitting down in his locker reading something, and I just walked right up and said, "Hi, Sherm, I'm back." DB room tomorrow after practice. But it took a long time to get there. So
there you go.
Persistence.
But you got there. No, that's
persistent.
Yeah, man. Doug does great work. Make sure you guys go check out his work at Touchdown Wire, man. Does great stuff. I read it all the time. When I feel smarter. Like when I'm trying to get nerdier, there's a few people that I like have to read up on to like learn my stuff, and Doug's definitely one of them, man. So we appreciate you. We appreciate you guys for tuning in to this episode of Seahawks Man to Man podcast. Again, make sure you follow us on Twitter. Doug, where can they follow you before we get you out of here?
NFL_Doug Farrar. I tweet about football and music and politics, so you may not like it. And then Touchdown Wire for everything else.
All right. Thank you so much again, Doug. We got to have you back on next year, man, for your annual appearance, man.
Right.
On that note, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching.